Oil-soaked images of the Gulf of Mexico continue to spill across newscasts and websites and magazines. And this morning we have reached one Vancouver photographer as he wraps up his assignment in the Gulf for National Geographic magazine. Kris Krug will share his work today at a forum in Washington, D.C. But first, Kris joins us on the phone right now. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Stephen.
Describe for me, if you can, the one picture you've captured so far that best tells the story of the spill.
Well, to avoid your question slightly, there's a couple that come to mind. The one is just flying out over the source of the oil, as they call it. And, in most of the frames you can see oil on the water and different things. But outside of the frame of the photo that you see, there's oil from horizon to horizon. And there's really just no way to kind of process what you're looking at. I mean, it's the big wide ocean. You're up so high you can see the curvature of the earth. And as far as you can see is oil. Some of it's light oil, looks like reflective rainbow dirty dishwater or something like that, and some of it's just sludgy, rust-colored, raw sewage-looking stuff bubbling up to the surface there. So it's pretty intense. And the other one that comes to mind is a little bit more of a human one. I was trailing along on a flat-bottom boat with an old salty sea captain there, and we were going up to all the working boats, the skimmers and the boom boats and stuff, and this one was run by some Vietnamese fishermen, and the thing that kind of just really hit me and broke my heart was the whole thing was just saturated with oil. The workers were covered in oil, the boats and the booms and the sails and the masts and the lines were all covered in oil, and it just looks, from a working and labor's perspective, unsustainable to me. I can't imagine how these guys could do this day after day until the oil's gone and not have their boat deteriorate in the process. It's just a filthy mess.
We've all seen pictures of it, of course, on television. You certainly saw them before you went. How different is it seeing it in person?
Well, like I was saying, I think the part that really kind of hits me is, anytime you're looking at it through my camera or through something on television, you're looking at a bird or a group of birds or maybe even a whole island covered in oil. But when you pull your face back away from the camera and you see the chain of islands covered in oil, or from horizon to horizon oil as far as you can see, that's the part that really is kind of beyond what you can see on television and kind of is the part that really kind of sucks the air out of the room when you're like, how? And then you only see a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen boats out there, from horizon to horizon. All you see is a few dozen boats cleaning it up, and they just look like, ants down there on the ground. I'm up in a seaplane. There's oil as far as you can see, and there's just a few boats, it looks like they're, just kind of lost, wandering their way across the water, just picking up whatever they can, and then at which point they set fire to it and try to burn it off.
You've been up in a seaplane, but there are lots of reports that media access to the spill has been very limited. What has your experience been?
Well, that's very much in line with our experience. So my partner, James Duncan Davidson, and I, who's down here with me, we called around, every number that we could get our hands on in many different states, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Florida, and we had a lot of trouble finding anyone who could take us up. A lot of these hours in these seaplanes and helicopters are already booked up by people related to the BP activities or oil spill recovery activities. Each one of these boats that's out there cleaning up has a spotter plane in the sky trying to tell them where to go to pick up the oil and stuff. So it's really, really locked down. The military has implemented a TFR, a temporary flight restriction zone out there, and most of the flyover coverage is given not to independent journalists, but to people related to BP who are out there drilling new wells or doing other things, But we read an article in the New York Times about this kind of renegade pirate seaplane captain, this 70-year-old man named Dickie, who had an incident about a month ago, I guess, where he tried to fly one of the parish representatives over his own parish to see the oil, and he was unable to get the squawk code from the TFR that he needed to fly over the area. And so he ended up making a big stink about it. This parish head kind of went to his state senator and said, who are these guys to tell me I can't fly over my own area? And Dickie's been flying out there for 30 or 40 years, and long story short, this guy somehow has found an exception in the rules where he's able to take people out over the oil. BP has arranged, scheduled media tours. But I don't really think that that's what most people want to see. They take you and show you the cleaned up areas. They show you a whole bunch of workers waiting on the beach for the oil to hit. But if you really want to see the straight goods, you got to get up there by yourself. And no, it's not easy at all. We were very lucky to find this guy.
Now, your next stop is to present your work at a forum in Washington, D.C. What do you hope people take away from it after they see your photographs?
Well, there's a couple things that we're trying to do with the TEDxOilSpill event in D.C. One is to kind of talk about ways to mitigate the current problems. There's been new solutions that have come up since the oil spill, like Kevin Costner's fancy oil water separating machine and other things like that. So that's one thing we're going to be talking about, is how to deal with what's there. Another thing we're going to be talking about is kind of alternative futures. So, what are the paths that we can take from here on out to not find ourselves in these type of positions in the future? But, on a much more just kind of personal and human level, what this trip has been about for me and what the TEDxOilSpill thing represents to me is like my own chance to kind of take a little piece of my power back and to not feel that kind of hopelessness and kind of anxiety over this. I mean, it's a huge, major problem. I can't go out there and clean up the oil myself, but I can contribute through my photos and stuff. And I think there's a lot of people out there who are watching this on television, and they're just kind of finding it emotionally overwhelming. And, I'd like to say to those people, do something. Action is the antidote to that despair that you're feeling. And so whether it be making art or getting your friends together and talking about, this type of thing, or following along the TEDxOilSpill event, do something. And by doing so, I think we can reclaim a little piece of our power and, feel a little bit more empowered and less hopeless when it comes to these big, epic scale environmental disasters.
Kris, it's great to